That's very perceptive of you, but it's actually not a point of order. Question number 6, Jacinda Ardern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Children and asks, is it acceptable that New Zealand has been ranked 34th out of 41 high-income OECD countries for child wellbeing in the UNICEF report, Building the Future, Children and the Sustainable Development Goals in Rich Countries?
And before I call the Minister, my office was advised this answer may be longer than normal. The Honourable Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, whilst in relation to this report, I only have ministerial responsibility for the indicators of child poverty and child abuse in Goals 1 and 16, and not the well-being of all children, I have no responsibility or control over how UNICEF determine their rankings. But I would note that the report itself states that it is limited by the lack of comparable data in some domains and, quote, the report card cannot provide an in-depth analysis of the reasons behind differences, end quotes. However, this government is absolutely committed to child wellbeing, which is why we have increased childcare support for low-income families, increased benefit rates for families with children for the first time in 40 years, increased working for families for low-income working families, introduced a $2 billion a year family incomes package in Budget 2017, which will lift families' incomes by an average of $26 a week and reduce the number of children living in families receiving less than half the median income by 50,000. We've introduced free doctors' visits and prescriptions for children under 13, extended paid parental leave and increased parental tax credits, as well as helping to serve an average of 125,000 kickstart breakfasts a week to school children across the country.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Supplementary. Why did she state yesterday that, quote, it is simply not possible to measure poverty, end quote?
The Honourable Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think that characterises my answer. I was talking about a single measure of poverty. I recall explaining that poverty, hardship and poverty on a spectrum, that we use multi-level, multi-measures, and that there was no country that I was aware of that had successfully used one measure to measure poverty.
Of them. Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
When her government signed up to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and pledged to halve poverty according to national definitions, what was her national definition?
The Honourable Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, again, I can only respond as with my ministerial responsibilities. But I am aware, and I've stated in this House before, that a whole-of-government, cross-government group are working on how we define those goals. There are a number of them, 16. They don't have to report until 2030, and the countries have to report twice between signing and 2030.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Is New Zealand on track to halve poverty by 2030, as her government has pledged to do, when she cannot even tell this House what poverty is?
The Honourable Tolley.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we don't have to define it any more than is done on an annual basis by MSD over a number of measures, whether it's by income, whether it is by household income, before and after housing, whether it is by hardship. This government probably, and the previous governments, have some of the best data to get underneath the causes of poverty. And as I said in the House yesterday, we are using those measures consistently over budgets as the economy grows and gives us the ability to invest back into our low-income households to help those children and those families.
Okay.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Supplementary question, Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Was the Minister embarrassed to read New Zealand being singled out in the UNICEF report as, quote, proof that high national income alone is no guarantee of a good record in sustaining child well-being?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, the difficulty with the UNICEF report is that it does rely in its conclusions on a number of measures that New Zealand was not able to provide data for. And New Zealand was not the only country in some of those measures. In fact, one of the measures that was used, I'm aware, was only developed for the EU. So that means that countries like Australia, the UK, USA and New Zealand and a myriad of others outside of Europe weren't able to comply with.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Jan
It was
Logie.
a very specific question in relation to a quote in that report about high national incomes and poor outcomes for children.
Yeah, no,
the Minister just...
No, the question was very much an opinion question. Would the Minister be embarrassed by such a statistic? The question was addressed.
Supplementary, Mr.
Supplementary
Speaker.
question, Jan Logie.
When the Minister spends all this effort on defending the poor outcomes for our children, is she seriously saying this is as good as it gets? And if so, where is her aspiration for our children?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this government doesn't rest and hasn't rest, and Budget 17 showed exactly that. $2 billion investment in those families on the lowest incomes, and we will continue. We will continue with the myriad of policies and programs that we put into place, but they are guided by the tremendous data that this government has, that this country has, to get underneath the drivers of poverty. Because it's not just enough to talk about it. This government is doing something about it.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Supplementary question. As part of the Sustainable Development Poverty Goals, what is she halving by 2030?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I am one minister of a number of ministers that have responsibility for the sustainability goals. And as I said, there is a cross-government working group looking to define what that will look like. But in the poverty area, there will not be one simple measure. There cannot be, because poverty cannot be defined by that. There will be a number of measures by which we will define it.
Question. Order. Point of order.
Oh,
the
Mr.
Honourable
Speaker,
Simon.